It's Madeline Benfield, and here I am with a fabulous special guest. This is my first episode, and I am so happy and proud to introduce Madeline Benfield. Welcome, Madeline.
Hi, Elaine. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So if anyone listening doesn't know who this beautiful young woman is, this is my stepdaughter, Madeline. And when I was trying to figure out who should be my first guest, there was no question it was going to be Madeline. She inspires me every day, and I've known her since she was really little. So I thought we could step back in time and talk about, your first impression or what you remember of us. I met you when you were about 1.5 to 2 years of age. So I thought we could start off by kind of the history of us.
Yeah, awesome. So I guess I'll start with my first memory of you. I was thinking back and trying to recall what it was, because obviously it's hard to recall memories from when you're super young. But I have to say that I think it was us going to the Renaissance fairs. I would have these big sparkly butterfly wings, and we would just be there having fun. I'd have food all over my face. And I think a lot of my memories have to do with food, because I remember us going to Waffle House. I also remember the zoo, a bunch of different outdoor animal and food related activities, which I guess maybe says something about my mind. But I think that's
basically our minds together.
Yes, I think that those are probably my earliest memories of us.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I totally remember. You always had the sparkle in you, those big angel wings. It was so cute. And you always
wanted little shirts that didn't cover my belly.
And you always wanted the wings in the car seat, and we're like, you can't have them on the car seat because they were too big. You couldn't get the belt over them. So I think something's really unique about us, and a lot of people comment, we're not the typical stepmother, stepdaughter relationship. We just never kind of have been. You have a fabulous mother. She's, of course, huge impact. You have a great relationship with her, and we get along well. What, from your perspective, makes us kind of different? And you kind of made the stepmother negative word kind of go away. So I'd love to get your thoughts on, kind of our unique relationship.
Obviously there's a lot of different power dynamics and roles at play in a step-parent, step-child relationship, and that differs from family to family. But I think part of the reason that ours is different is because we met when I was super young, where you've always been a part of my life, and I've always respected you and loved you in that way, where I think with people who have step-parents come into their lives when they're a bit older, it's something new that you have to adjust to, and I think it was always there, and I always appreciated you and loved you as though you were one of my, birth parents. And so I think I'm lucky to have this really good relationship where you've been my parent this whole time, but you've also just been my friend and a role model and someone that I've looked up to since the very beginning. So I think that's part of it. Definitely the age that I was. And yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I apologize. I'm learning. The camera's up here. I'm trying to look at Madeline, but Madeline's this way. So as I learn how to do this, just know I'm looking odd. Yeah. And I think, it's always interesting. We look very similar. And so,
when I have blonde hair, for sure.
I know it's the eyes, it's the hair, and everyone's like, she's not your daughter. You have to tell the story of how we were at a CVS and we were checking out. Tell the story, because it's by far one of my favorites.
I definitely don't remember this because I think I was 5 probably, but I've heard about it so much that I've formulated my own memory of it. But we were in line checking out, and someone was like, "Oh, your daughter looks so much like you," to Elaine. And I was like, "Oh, that's not my mom. That's Elaine. Duh, that's Elaine. How do you not know that that's my Elaine?"
Which so funny. You're like, "No, that's the woman my dad's marrying," or something. You had such a funny response. But we've always gotten that. I think it also makes it easier because we do really resemble each other. I don't know what it's like to not have, the minute I saw you, I was like, if I had a daughter, she would look like you. And that, I don't know if that makes it easier for a relationship that, I know friends that have children that don't look like them, and people are like, "Oh, are you the nanny?" And it's you forget how you have that kind of thought of, you always blend it. We all look similar.
Yeah. We all look similar.
That made it easier as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a unique thing that other step relationships don't have.
Yeah. So I remember a lot when you were growing up, you had to deal with the two homes. You had to deal with two other siblings, at our house, your mother and your stepdad didn't have other children. I always called you kind of a Sherpa because you had multiple bags, and whether we were driving you or when you drove yourself, how hard was that for you as a child? Do you look back and go, oh, I remember always having multiple bags, and you could do things different here than you could do at your mother's. How was that for you growing up?
It's honestly like that dynamic is something that I think about a lot. And it's funny, there's like this whole side of like TikTok where of like kids with divorced parents showing like photos of them carrying all of their stuff back and forth every week. And I think like at times it was really difficult. Like I was not able to forget things. If I forgot things, I would just be without that for like 4 or 5 days. Or if I didn't know my plans ahead of time for the weekend, I wouldn't have the appropriate things for if I was going to like go with my friends to the mall or if we were going to go on a hike or something. And I definitely did have like two of each thing, like one at each house. But, there was like certain things I wanted to have with me at all times. And I think that really helped me. Like I'm not a forgetful person. Like I definitely pay a lot of attention to detail in my work and just in my lifestyle. And I think that is something that I picked up from that, where if I forgot something, I didn't have it. So I had to, adapt and learn to remember everything that I wanted. There were some times where it was really hard. I remember like at school, we would have this big room where everyone would put their gym bags, and you would have your gym bag there so that you could carry a backpack with you during the day. And I would always have like my gym bag and then also my like bag to take to my dad's, and then like my bag of art stuff that I needed to bring, like everything. I always had everything with me. I'm also physically strong person. I think I always have been, and that was definitely part of it. But yeah, there were times where that part of it specifically was really tough, where I would just have to like even going to a friend's house, I would have to plan ahead, several days ahead, knowing, oh, this is what I need for my friend's house this day. This is who's going to pick me up.
And you never made us, like my recollection, you never were like, oh, I forgot this, come and bring it. You did a great job being responsible going. I mean, I only remember a couple times where you were like, I forgot sneakers and you had something at school. But that was very, very rare that you just were like, you adapted. And I think that leads into almost who you are today, that you can adapt to any situation and you can be with, a huge bag or like a tiny bag, as we've traveled a lot together. And it's like, she throws her bag on and it's like, it can go on a plane always. And I think that's part of, kind of your childhood and narrative for it.
And I do feel,
sorry, go ahead.
I feel like I am ready to go on an adventure at any time. That is also a big part of who I am, just like whatever I have with me. And yeah, I think that that makes a lot of sense. Like I definitely had to adapt. And there were times that I was without sneakers at school and I would have to just like sit there while everyone was running. But I didn't mind.
yeah, that's not so bad. How hard was it going, as we said, you have two siblings here, your mother never had other siblings for you. How hard was it, because I have my perspective of, our house was always loud. We talked a lot. We were just, I'm loud. So to me, how hard was it to go from the siblings to the no siblings? And you're an only child, you were always the center of our world, but then I think with your mother, you're really the center of the world. How was that for you growing up? I don't know if I've ever asked you this, by the way. Yeah. I don't know if I have.
I think again, it was definitely harder in the moment. Like if I think back and look on growing up and having to do that and having to carry everything with me all the time, it was definitely harder then, and I probably felt it more. But now looking back, I only see it as a positive thing, where at your house, we would be loud all the time, my siblings and I would be running around like crazy, beating each other up, even though I was 5 years older than them. And yeah, it was super rambunctious. And I think there's positives and negatives, not even positives and negatives, but there's two sides to every coin. And I think that there were two sides to both of those scenarios, where I would be an only child at my mom's house and then have siblings at your house. And I think I picked up the best qualities of both of those situations, where again, it's I'm adaptable, and I also am like a super outgoing person. Like I like to be with people a lot. I like to be social, and I'm loud when I'm around people, but I do really, really, really need my time alone and
Yeah,
need
it's
my
the best of
quiet.
both worlds. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's interesting because that is true. Because you are so outgoing, but then you get to the point where you're like, I need my own
I
time.
gotta go.
I need quiet. So maybe it is the kind of the both worlds kind of converging. And you were
Yeah,
such a great, like I always tell you, you were such a great, you still are obviously such a great big sister. And it was such a help to me because we had kids. You were, as you said, 5 and 6, and our, your siblings are 15 months apart, and you were just so great and helpful. And I think, we were always so conscious of giving you time alone that we made it like conscious decision going, okay, well, we have the other two, you're with us most of the, like, we had a great schedule with you. So, really Thursdays through the weekend, pretty much most of your childhood, we were very consistent, which is great.
that was another thing I think that was helpful.
Yeah,
Was
I
like
think
the schedule.
yeah, and you weren't like, I hear of divorced families and they're like, oh, well, we only see, every one weekend every month. And I think your mom and dad did a great job being like, oh no, it really was pretty close to 50%, depending with vacations, everything in between. I think that, and that's probably why you're so close with your siblings as well,
Yeah. I have a memory of, I think I was like in second grade. I was at school in this, like, I forget what the word is, but like a circular structure that's outside, like by the playground. We were at that structure, and I was with my teacher, and I remember we were just like talking about how I had divorced parents, and I was like the only kid. When I started school in kindergarten, I was the only kid with divorced parents, and then slowly but surely, like, that was happening to more kids, and everyone said that, like, oh, it's not going to be just you. And so, like, there were definitely kids who had divorced parents at that time, but I was like talking to my teacher about the time I spent at both houses, and then we kind of went through like, okay, this is how many hours a day I'm at school, this is how many hours a day I'm asleep, or like I'm interacting with my family, and it was literally 50-50 because it would be like Thursday night to Sunday morning, then I'd go to church
get you all weekend.
Sunday. Yeah. So you had me Friday, Saturday, and it was always like pretty split, and I think that was something that was like super positive, and why I did have a good relationship and still do with all my parents and my siblings.
Yeah, no question. So kind of changing topics a little bit. So, giving you the kudos, you were a great student, self-motivated, never needed to nag you. I always had this vision of you. You're going to know where I'm going with this, with STEM. You were that girl that I was like, oh my God, what she can do moving, like if she went into STEM. And I remember you're like, I don't love it. And I'm like, no, but you could be like, a scientist, you could be, NASA engineer. And you're like, I don't love it. And I remember it was so hard for me to go, this isn't her path. This is my path for her. And you really changed my opinion of just because you're good at something. And now I think your siblings are getting that benefit.
I was going to say that
too. They really are. But
paving the path.
You totally on everything. But that to me was a really great parenting moment where you were like, it's not going to make me happy.
Yeah.
And I remember then being like, well, this isn't my life. I'm living my life. You need to live your life. So if you don't mind, talk about like how you knew that this direction and lead into what you're doing today, because I think you're you found your passion. You're 23, you're learning, you're still, but I want to talk about how you went from, how'd you figure it out? Because you were what, freshman, sophomore in high school, and you were like, nope, this is where I want to go.
I think I kind of went like, as all high schoolers do, I kind of went back and forth on what I wanted for a while. I didn't really know. I hadn't had like exposure to different careers or to different places that I wanted to live. And I think a big push for me was knowing where I wanted to be. Not what I wanted to be doing, but like where I wanted to go and what made sense for that specific location, where I still am today. But there was a long time where I wanted to be in like environmental science. I wanted to do like marine biology or something.
You would have great at that too. Yeah.
And like, it's still a big interest of mine. I really like the environment. I like earth studies, earth science, but
And tell where you at the age of 5.
Yeah, I'll get to that.
Okay.
I think like I was taking a lot of classes. I was doing really well in school, like all of high school, maybe not so much middle school, but in high school I just really became like excited by learning and just like studying a lot of different things. And I did do really well in like sciences and maths. But I always was like a creative little child, like just creative problem solving. I always was writing. I remember one day making like a list of names that I would use in stories, and they were like mean girl names. And I remember Elaine saw the list and was like, "Don't let anyone at school see this," because she thought it was like a list of mean girls that I knew.
I remember that, yes. And you're like, no.
No, I was like, no, this is for a story. So I was always writing as a kid, and my mom and my stepdad were really interested in folk art and collecting Southern art, and so that was always, well, they were interested in it, and since they were interested in it, I was like, I can't be interested in what my parents like, but I couldn't deny it. And I joined theater when I was in the middle of high school, I think like my early junior year, and I made a lot of friends there, and I knew that I wasn't gonna, like, I wasn't made to act, I wasn't made to like sing or dance, but I was doing stage management and costume design and lighting and all of these different hands-on creative activities. And it did take me a while to figure out what I wanted to do, but I was like really into photography in high school. That was like my main thing. I remember my 16th birthday, we were at True Food at Lenox Mall, and you guys gave me my first camera, which I still use.
Yes.
That was 7 years ago now, but yeah, you gave me my first camera, and that was a really big kind of like milestone in me figuring out what I wanted to do. So my senior year of high school, I was like really kind of on the fence about what I wanted to do. Part of me wanted to be like, you know, at the beach, like studying whatever, you know, just studying the environment and being an environmental scientist. But I did decide that I wanted to go to art school for graphic design, and I applied to a couple of different schools. I applied to Parsons, which is where I went. I applied to Mika, which is in Baltimore. I applied to SCAD because I had done a SCAD seminar where I was like there for part of the summer the year before. And I did photography, and I did like analog photography in the dark room, which I really, really enjoyed.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah, you were really good. You're still really good, but that was, you just have a natural, really great eye.
Photography, like I definitely want to get back into that now.
Yeah.
And then I applied to Belmont in Nashville, and I went to Parsons with my mom and dad, which was interesting. It was the first trip I had been on with my mom and dad. And we went to New York, and we went to Parsons on my birthday. It was my 18th birthday. That was the day I toured the school. And I was like, I want to go here. Because when I was 5, I was with you guys in Times Square in New York. And I was just standing there, and I was like, I want to live here. This is where I want to live.
I'll never forget. It's like one of those etched memories, like I will remember for the rest of my life, you being like, I'm going to live here. And I was like, Times Square. And you're like, no, New York. And like one picture after the trip where you were like me and dad, and it's like you in the skyscrapers of New York.
Yeah.
You knew at 5.
And that I had like drawn that or something. And then I had like typed over it, which was funny because I was like typing and printing out like fonts, and I had no idea I was going to be doing graphic design.
Like you had that vision, and and it's interesting because I was never surprised that was kind of be your path. So tell the audience, so what was your degree in, and kind of where did that lead you to where you are today?
So my degree was in communication design, which is graphic design, but kind of more of a broad way of saying that, where it's not necessarily like, oh, we're making fonts or we're making magazines or we're like laying out brochures. It's not even, it's like more broad than that, where at Parsons, there was another degree called design and technology, which was kind of just the way that like coding is artistic in nature and how it can be designed, and just learning about like functionality and accessibility. And like, while I wasn't studying that, it's kind of a more print-focused approach to that, where it's all about fonts. You know, that was like a big part of what we studied, but we also had to learn how to code. And we basically just learned graphic design for a bunch of different industries, which I like didn't think about this necessarily when I was starting school, but it's something that I've really kind of like mentally adhered to since graduating and since like COVID happened and I developed a bunch of other interests during COVID, that if I wanted to go into environmental science, that would have been my career path for the rest of my life. Like that does apply to other industries and other.
It's hard to switch when you have a very narrow degree. Mm-hmm.
But graphic design, every industry
needs
design. Like everyone needs.
You could go to do another career. Like you're just.
Like I could work for an environmental science company, or I could do research, or like, you know, I could do a bunch of different things using what I already know from this degree.
Agreed.
So it applies to every kind of job, every kind of business, every kind of, you know, structure. Yeah. Everyone needs graphic design and visuals and coding and web design, brand design, all of these things like are applicable everywhere. And so that was something that was really comforting, where I was like, this is a tool that I can use to go any direction that I want to go. So where I am now and how that led to where I am now, it was kind of a lot of different things at once. But one of my biggest passions and hobbies throughout my life has been music, listening to music.
100%. Like
music.
Yeah. 100%, really. It was always underlying of everything. And we're a music family. We love music. And so that was always, we were always playing music in cars and just, you know,
dance parties.
I would just say family dance night.
Over for our dance nights too.
And it would just be loud and crank up the music and just dance. I mean, the kids would dance on tables. Like literally we had a table in our family room, but it was always kind of, no matter what kind of genre, we just loved it. So you always have it and it always made you happy.
Yeah. And that's definitely something that like my family did influence me. Like all of you influenced me into loving. And now, I mean, we all still love it. Like, look what we're all doing now, you know, and how, especially like my siblings, they both really love music as well. And so that's a really like amazing shared thing between our family. But yeah, I was able to use graphic design to get into the music industry. And so that's where I'm working right now. During COVID, like during the lockdown and quarantine and the year or two after that, as I was finishing up school, I ended up doing a year online and then another half year online. So a lot of online, but I was still living in New York and able to be here and able to meet people in the industry, which was like super, super great. And I don't think that would have really happened without COVID. But the way that this started was I just needed a part-time job during COVID. I had been working a graphic design job for an app startup that I wasn't really loving, and it was a really good first experience. It was like my first paid job, like paid graphic design opportunity. And I learned a lot from that, just about not only like the tools that I was using, but just how to work with other people, how to be a freelance designer.
You did this during school. So I do want to highlight, like you had a full workload.
Yeah.
You work really hard. And that also gave you the opportunity to kind of figure out what you liked and didn't like, which I remember being like, you know, we've talked about it, that it's, you know, it's hard because school is your priority. But for you, the busier you are, the more successful you are. It is who you are. I mean, yes, it's exhausting. And I always go, how do you juggle all these things? But to me, for you, idle hands. Like if you have idle hands, you're bored. And then it's, you know, to me, I love that you were able to do that during school, which to me, give you credit. That's super hard.
Yeah.
But it led you to today, which everything was a stepping stone for you.
Yeah. And during COVID, I got a job at a radio station here in Brooklyn called A Lot Radio. Mm-hmm. And that place kind of just changed my life. And at the time, it was just like a part-time job. I was doing some archiving work for the radio because my boss, before he hired me, he saw my resume and he was like, this girl knows how to use computers. So that's basically why I got hired to do the computer work. So I was archiving all of these shows that were on the radio. The radio is 24/7 music, and it's an internet radio, and we have live DJs from 10 a.m. to midnight every day.
And you have cool
DJs.
And then you also have bands in the summer, and it has a really cool outdoor seating like you described, because to me, you have to see it. It truly is a very unique place. Mm-hmm. And it's like hidden in the rough to me. I mean, it's just amazing. So sorry, you describe it.
There's an outdoor section that's a triangle. So it really was like a safe space for me and a lot of people during COVID, because while in New York, all of these outdoor restaurants and outdoor dining experiences were popping up, this place was something that was only outside organically to begin with. So it was like a natural outdoor space where people would gather, especially during summer 2020 after the killing of George Floyd. There were gatherings in the park, in McCarran Park, which is a really big park here in Brooklyn, North Brooklyn. There'd be gatherings there, and then people would go over to the radio, and it was just like a really big community space. So it was where I was able to meet people. I was able to meet people in the music industry and just local people who were going through the same thing that I was during COVID. But that
And
job
it's
led me.
like, sorry. And to me, what I love is it's everyone. It's every kind of walk of life. It is eclectic, but it's these incredible creative humans. Like, I've been there a few times, and to me, I think your mother's seen it even more than me. I find it such a unique amalgamation of all these communities and people. And that to me is what Brooklyn and New York actually represents. It's just everyone. Everyone's supporting everyone. Like, that to me is really, I think the Lot has done a great job on that. Just from my, few times I've been there. And
Yeah, it's a really, really special place. If you're ever in Brooklyn, you should go check it out.
yeah, definitely. I'll put a mention on the Lot. So that leads to today. So tell us what you're, doing today.
So the Lot led me to an internship at a record label also in Brooklyn. And I was doing graphic design there for a while, which was really great. I was doing that while I was working at the Lot, and I was also an intern at the Lot at the same time. So I had 2 internships, a job, and I was in 5 classes. And I was running a small Depop business where I was reselling clothes. But this was spring 2021, and that was pretty kind of peak COVID as well. Yeah. We were all getting our vaccines at the time. I was able to get mine early through the radio, which was super, super amazing after I've had COVID quite a number of times. But that was great.
And you were you were super careful.
Yeah.
You masked up, you double masked up, you had N95, it wasn't for you not being careful. To me, I was like, if you got it, it was
just living in a place with so many people.
You're
vaccinated. But yeah, so I had those jobs at the time, and I've had a number of different internships and small little opportunities here and there since then. But yeah, so I've worked at the Lot since fall 2020. So it's been over 2 years, 2.5 years. But in that time, I graduated college after I was in remote school for a long time. I graduated in May, which was a really, really, I don't know. It was great. It didn't feel like the craziest day of my life, I think partially because so much of my college experience was online. But my jobs are really what got me through all of that. And so since then, I began a job at Love Injection, which is a fanzine, record label, and creative studio. Pretty close to
what a fanzine is, because I had to research when you first told me. I was like, "What is that?" So explain what that is.
So a zine is essentially a more DIY, less kind of commercial magazine. So It's usually on the small scale, more DIY. And this particular one is run by 2 creatives, Barbie Bertiche and Paul Raffaelli. They are local. They DJ at the Lot, and they run several parties throughout New York. And so they run this scene, which I've been reading for several years, and it all is focused on the underground dance music scene here in Brooklyn, in New York. And
cool. Follow it if you haven't. I enjoy seeing their posts, and they're 2 incredible people as well. And I would say revolutionaries for this is a cool area that I think it's it's very interesting that they created this kind of community, which I really like as well.
Yeah, there's a big community aspect to all of these things. So I've been their assistant since the summer, and it's a really fun job because I get to work at a record label and at a zine and design for a creative studio. So it's really the best of 3 worlds.
Of 3 worlds. And it was something I do want to highlight. When you graduated, we had the conversation of, don't go to a 40-hour work week, 9 to 5. It's not who you are. I think your generation, I always feel like I'm old when I say that, but your generation to me doesn't need to have that typical 40-hour work week. You have flexibility. You need to do in each of these outlets. Like, I don't know if it's sustainable over time. I worry about that for you, but I do love that, you don't clock in, you don't clock out. That is a really interesting, and I'm not sure, I think you have other friends that are in the creative space, whether it be music, whether it be movies, they also have a similar, it's not the traditional, you have to do this. So I think that's also really interesting because I think it's the best. I always said that's the best for you to figure this out. There was no pressure to say, you must get this job at this, which I had. And I'm thrilled that you don't have to, which it all led to where I am today. But I also feel like you don't need to. You have a different path.
I don't. And not to say that won't one day come, because I do think that there's a lot of security and sustainable work in that. And I do think that one day that will come. But right now, I think it's kind of a sign of the times and just a sign of people my age. Like, we don't want these same things, these same structures that have always been there, especially for work. And I do think about the motto a lot of working to live versus living to work. And
I do want to jump on that topic. To me, I think the big thing we've talked about is you're on my health insurance. Yes. And I will keep you as long as as long as physically possible. But that is, to me, that's where the stability comes from, that 40-hour work week or companies that offer that. Otherwise, I'd be like, man, I would never go to the 40-hour work week. Yeah. It's insurances. But I think you brought up something else, and your two siblings have agreed to be on here as well. All of you don't want to work to live. You want to live, or reverse.
Yeah. We don't want to live to work. We want to
don't want to live to work. And I think that is something, once again, your generation, all of you feel the same way. You don't want the big house, the big cars. You want to have a great life. You want to enjoy living.
An enriched life where I know it's not the same for everyone. And I do have to say, I'm super privileged to be able to do what I do just because of the family that I have and the education that I've had and
the four parents and
who I am. Yeah. And I'm super privileged in that way, but I'm so happy to be there and to be able to take advantage of it and to just work to do what I'm passionate about, to be in music, to be in art, to be in these community spaces, and to have the ability to be able to transfer my skills to a bunch of different jobs. It's something that's super amazing, and I'm very happy and privileged to be in the space of doing that.
And you're also, the companies or the businesses all thrive from you showing your talent to each of them. That, to me, not one place gets to see this amazing Madeline and what your skill set is. All of them get a piece of what that is. And I think that's also, everyone benefits from it. It's they each get a piece. And that, I think, is also a great advantage. I know we've been talking for a while. I feel there's so many other questions I want to ask you, and I'm sure you'll be coming back to another part.
In a couple of years, we'll see where I am.
In a couple of years, we'll see where you are. I know you'll be doing great. I think I'd love you to give tips for, as kids are figuring out who they're meant to be. What's a piece of advice? Because I've seen you grow and thrive and be, without me getting emotional, this amazing, amazing human. But I love that you were able to take control of that. Is there certain tips that you could give someone in your, that is just kind of trying to figure it out, graduating from high school or wherever in between? What would you tell them about figuring out who they're meant to be and whatnot?
And this is a hard one. Mm-hmm. And I think it's kind of easier said than done, but just being true to who you are inside. I know that sounds like a cliche and it's easier said than done, but I really just was able to look past all of these different worldly pressures where it's okay, you have to be super successful, you have to make money, you have to be a creator, you have to look cool, you have to have a good social media, all of these things, and just figuring out what you really care about. What in your schoolwork, in your activities that you do after school, what really drives you and what makes you the most excited? Because for me, it was a lot of different things where I had, autonomy and freedom and creative control in photography, just working by myself was something that I really like. Being able to rely on myself and being detail oriented in my design work and in my other work. Yeah. But I saw that a lot through Well, I do like to work on my own, but I also like to work with other people. And I think like when I was in theater in high school, I was stage managing a lot of shows, and that is something that really has informed what I like to do in like my other hobbies and where I could see myself in work. Like I sometimes have done like film production. I managed the lot for a period of time, and just knowing that those specific things,
Yeah.
those skills that you see like within what you're doing, if you take out the context of that and just know that like, oh, you like managing, oh, you're like super organized, or you like to work as a team, like seeing these things and seeing how that can translate to your passions and what you want to do in your life, and just bringing that with you.
Yeah. And you never, and you know, as we talked about earlier, you didn't let anyone get in your way. Like no matter how I thought your life should go, or your parents or your friends. And I remember, you know, even in high school, a lot of your high school friends went to schools around here in the South where we live in Atlanta. And I remember you being like, no, you know, you wanted to go somewhere different to explore. And I think it's not that you didn't take advice, you just knew your direction. And no one really, it's, you know, not in a bad way, but no one could stop you because you knew that's where you wanted to go. And I think that's, you know, a credit to your inner strength.
Yeah,
Any,
on that, like a last piece of advice that's kind of like silly is literally YOLO. Like you only live once. And if you're not doing what you want to be doing, stop.
yeah,
No one is making you do that. Like I know that there are different circumstances for different people where you might not have the ability to just quit your job because of insurance or just because of stability or savings, or you know, it's hard to find jobs these days, and that will ebb and flow, of course, like with the economy, just with the state of the country. But YOLO, like
yeah.
you are in control. It is your life, and it's only going to happen once. So you might as well do it now.
No, I think that's fabulous advice. And I think, you know, something that I was talking to you, but prior to this, you know, you make everything happy. You make everything fun. That's your DNA. And I know there's days where you're like, oh, it's not a great day or whatever, but you do live by that. You've lived by
Yes.
that as a little kid. You just, everything's better with, we always joke, everything's better with Madeline. It's just happier and it's fun. But if everyone had that kind of motto going, what makes you happy to get up in the morning? Then, you know, you at the end of your life can go, hey, I did everything I wanted to do. There's no, you'll have no regrets. And that to me, I think is fabulous, you know? So one last final parting question.
Okay.
So as we talk about, you're super inspiring to me, have been since the minute I met you. I'm so fortunate to have you in my life. And anyone that knows you will agree. Everyone knows that. What empowers you? What makes, you know, inspires you, empowers you? I wanted to say as a woman, but I just think as a human. And that's where, you know, this will be the question I probably ask every person I interview. But for you, what empowers you? Another hard one.
Yeah. I think two things come to mind. The first is essentially what I just said, where I'm like super empowered and I get up every day and I'm excited for every day because I only get to do this once. There's never going to be another day of like, there's never going to be another April 2nd, 2023. And that's also super cliche, but I've really, really taken that to heart over the past few years. I think COVID was a big influence on that. And I've just gone through a lot of hardships the past year or so. And that's something that I've really had to take to heart, where there are hard days and those days are going to be difficult. You're not going to want to get up. And there's days that I am really down and I don't have this in the back of my mind. But on most days, it's just that this life is fleeting and these days are fleeting. I'm never going to be as young as today. I have this energy and this passion that drives me. That's the other thing, is I'm working in, you know, places that I care about and these jobs that I care about with people that I care about. And I can see, you know, how the work that I'm doing affects other people, you know, on a one-to-one scale, which not everyone has that benefit at their jobs or in their careers. But that's something that really pushes me, where I get to see and hear the music every day and see how much joy it brings people and how they can find community and find their niche and just feel loved and feel comfortable in these places. And
no matter who they are, no matter who they are, who they love, no matter what, anything, I think that that's something else you you know, that's just empowering, making people, you know, feel safe and good, and it reflects in all the community that you have around you. Yeah. So any other things that I didn't ask you that you'd love to discuss? Because we could talk, I mean, I'm not joking, for days.
No, we could talk for days. I think that about covers it. I mean, there's definitely more that I'll say next time that we talk.
Yeah, I think the same. Well, you exceeded my expectations, as you do always. I couldn't be more happy that you were my first guest on Herstories.
Thank you so much. It's truly an honor.
You inspire me every day, my love. Really. I'll get emotional. I'm thankful every day you're in my life. And you inspire me. Thank you.
Inspire me.
Love you. Thank you, Madeline. Can't wait to do another one with you.
Can't wait. Thank you so much, Elaine. And thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.